once and then we'll start.
Neeta, you can start. It's live.
Super. Hemant, can you just try speaking once so that I'm clear you can hear me and I can hear you.
Anyway, Asha, I'll just, is it better anyway?
Yeah.
Or no?
No, I think you can chuck the headphones. I think this is better.
Is this better?
Yeah.
All right, I'll just chuck the headphones, I guess. Yeah.
Super. So shall we roll?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hello and welcome. Network agency versus independence has been a really long-ranging debate, which gets picked up every now and then. But fortunately, it's always really interesting to hear both sides, know the context. With the COVID-19 induced lockdown, which is literally threatening agency revenues like never before. We thought this was an opportune moment to bring it back. So we got some top network agency heads in the country, and in all honesty, are trying to pit them against the prominent that we've invited on this weekly debate show called Creative Talk. Let me introduce our panelists for the day. We have Rohit Ori, Group CEO and Chairman of Pepsi India. Virat, Group CEO of Marlin Low Lintas. Hi Rohit, hi Virat.
Hi.
Hello.
And on the other side, we have Raj Kamble, founder and CCO of Famous Innovations. Amit Akali, founder and CCO of WhatsApp. And Hemant Mishra, founder and MD of Magic Circle. And
Hi,
before
guys.
we begin the And before we begin the debate, let me tell you our hashtag is Creative Zone, and we're streaming this debate live on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we would love to take some of the viewer questions here on these platforms. So let's begin. Interestingly, I've spoken to each one of you for my cover story about a month ago, not wrong. And we had concluded that quarter two will be the real test of creative agencies. Now we're already in quarter two. I want to firstly know from each one of you, how is the revenue situation looking like at this point? And what is the client sentiment right now, considering that COVID-19 cases are not going down? Rohit, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a situation that is affecting everybody. It's not about whether it's affecting independents or the network agencies. I think this is something that is, an all-pervasive impact, not just on advertising industries, on every single industry possible. So the thing is that we are seeing a revival of demand, and that's the key. I mean, it's not so much about whether we're going back to work or what's happening to the revenue. I think the starting point is consumer demand is increasing, and June has been a good month for many of our clients. So we are hopeful that over the next few months we'll see some traction, some going back to normalcy. But of course, when I say we are going back, the demand in many cases it slipped to zero, right? So at a 35-40% of what it was at a similar month last year. I think we're seeing an increase, so it's a good positive sign. How fast we are going to actually recover is something we really need to wait and watch and see how that happens.
Raj, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think it's not different than what Rohit said. Loss of client first quarter was slightly, people don't know where we are heading to, but now we're getting rid of an idea what's the next few months. So I think we're also getting lots of invite for the new businesses. We're pitching perhaps every week. So lots of big clients. That was surprising. I think consumer is like agents, all the clients also looking at agency who they can fit in their culture, budget, and for next few months or for next few years. So I think it is definitely a positive for the independent agency also as it's not.
Okay. Virat, would you say that tough negotiations with clients have begun now? Because I remember when we spoke last, you mentioned that luckily for you, your clients were not as hit as some of the other agencies. Has changed in that 1 month?
Neeta, your voice is cracking up. So, if I get you right, your question is that whether clients are, once again negotiating, and
Right.
yeah. So, look, what I had shared with you is that our, I mean, it's fortunate that our portfolio is more FMCG oriented. So, yes, of course, we've been impacted, but maybe more secure because of our FMCG bent of portfolio. And like Rohit and Raj were saying that clients are looking at the coming quarter positively. So there's a lot of new briefs, a lot of things that had been put on the back burner. Projects were put on back burner. Those have come on the front burners. Well, work hadn't stopped. Somehow we were even in the previous quarter, everyone was very busy. Scenario building. If this is the scenario, then what is the response? If that is the so there were multiple. So we were all keeping very busy. But now it seems like there is actually real work, real projects that we are working on. Clients are optimistic. They're willing to put money. So it's actually better. I can see really. I mean, some clients, some non-core clients that had kind of taken a break because they were severely impacted, have actually come back. Very few of them, but it's a good sign. They've come back with a brief, with the retainer back. So we are breathing a little better.
Okay. And Amit, you're one of the few agency heads who believes in flings over marriages. Let me clarify, in the client relationship. But many marketers that I spoke to have been said that they've been particularly considerate towards agencies with whom they've had really long-standing relationships. Even creative heads say that rock-solid age-old relationships with clients have proven to be more beneficial during COVID-19 over the more transactional, project-based ones. What do you think? How has it been for your clients?
So honestly, I think for an independent agency like ours, I think we have really, really strong relationships. We have more of marriages than flings. And while we're calling them flings, I think we would call them more of wooing clients. I think projects are the great way for someone like us to get into businesses with some of the biggest clients in the country. We're doing it with Tanishq, we're doing it with Lenovo, we're doing it with some of the largest clients in the country. I think we look at the project the same way we look at at a retainer. So we actually have a fantastic relationship. We do more than one project. In a way, it's pitching and being paid for it. So honestly, we look at projects very, very differently. I also believe that as we go on, I think retainers are going to be a small composition of the way everybody earns. So I think we're going to be earning through projects, we're going to be earning through production, we're going to be earning through even products, we're going to be earning through platforms, they're going to be earning through media, digital. So I think the agency model itself will have to change, and we'll have to be a lot more flexible. And like I was saying, I think we've actually one of the few agencies that have done better this year, same time than we were last year. And I was having the same conversation in the group before this conversation started. So there are categories that are actually, there are businesses that we've won in the last 3 months. And there are categories that are spending far more and giving us retainers, big retainers, especially OTP, health insurance, so all these categories are very, very active, and touch wood, things have been good.
You've been lucky in that way. Welcome to Hemant. I remember in April 2018, I had approached you for a story, and you had told me off the record that you're going to be launching your own agency, and Make My Trip will be following you to Magic Circle. Now, yours is literally the youngest agency on this panel. Tell me, would you say that the impact of COVID-19 has been that much more for you than the rest?
Well, I guess by the sheer fact that we are not very large, the bullet seems to have grazed our head and gone away. Because I quite agree with Amit on relationships of, I guess most independent agencies, certainly ours, are much stronger than a client and agency relationship. These are clients who founded our agency. These are clients who are invested in us literally since we've been looking after the brand for a long time and now independently doing that. Beyond my founder clients, the other clients also, we haven't had an impact that's shaken up the agency and made me review, is there a future for us or not? You spoke about revenues. Are the revenues back? And there, I must say, I am so happy that I don't work for a network agency. Well, there's nobody asking me that question except you. Are the revenues back? For us, it's very important to understand that the talent that we have, and I guess that's the biggest asset any independent agency has. We pay them very, very well. And thankfully, we've had no problem in retaining, in fact, hiring some more talent at this point in time, because the work hasn't gone down, interestingly. While some businesses have nearly come to zero and the others are still struggling, work seems to be very, very high, which gives me a strong indication that clients are very bullish, the brands are very bullish, and they're expecting a much stronger comeback. Therefore, so are we.
Okay, so the work has really increased, you're saying, in that sense.
Oh, yes. I must say work has really increased for us because we are doing a whole lot of digital now. And I've always believed that I never wanted to start a separate digital agency and a separate creative agency because to my mind, it's very important for the idea to be cohesive right across. And we've taken this time to educate our people. We've got a very good digital person coming in who's joined us, and she's helped training the agency, so much so that we are now actually doing a lot of digital work for our clients, which is new for us.
Is literally the good part that most agencies at this point in time have automatically turned to digital. Raj, you can how has it been for you with Famous? Are you doing more digitally stronger work right now than you did earlier?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in an earlier article, I think people hired CS, like a chief technology officer, to make their traditional agency to digital agency. But that COVID-19 did the 90% job. They made the traditional agency to digital agency. Now I think the agency only have a 10% to choose the right people who can do the other 10% to finish and get the, I think is a time that required. Everything happened with the time. But yeah, we are doing our 90%, I think 100% work is now digital. Every single client, whatever the medium is available, we are doing it. So lots of proactive stuff. We're not waiting for the briefs, talking to the client every day. So I think it's no different than other agencies, actually.
Is it the same for you, Rohit and Virat and Amit? Amit, you've been in digital for a while. Rohit and Virat, is it similar?
So certainly, I think, like Raj is mentioning, it's the whole pace of digital transformation has picked up. We've got more mandates, and obviously, when the work has, the only way to kind of for the work to see light of day was digital. So we've done a lot of digital work in the last 3-4 months. All the work has gone on digital, and all the thinking has kind of obviously shaped up like that. And there are also, we've also actually been thinking of now, not just campaigns for digital, but also tech innovations for digital. So the whole mindset, I'm quite happy, the whole mindset has changed. And we have been talking about digital for very, very long. And it's been a slow process. But I think, overall, if there is one kind of silver line that is coming out of this COVID, it's that the digital transformation, you don't have to sell internally, it's happening.
Okay.
So luckily, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go on, Amit.
No, so luckily we haven't been talking about it for long. We've been doing it for long. So we started 5 years back, and I think I've been telling the team that we're lucky we've had a 5-year head start in that sense. And we've been truly integrated from day one, and that's why the name "What's Your Problem?" believing that the problem can really be solved through absolutely any media. And we've been one of the few agencies that doesn't have a digital. We don't hire digital people, or we don't have a separate digital creative or a separate mainline creative and account management, etc., etc. We've always had one team that does both. So we've We've over the last 5 years had half of the team coming from digital and half of the team coming from mainline and training each other. So I think we've been at the right point. In fact, what we've been doing is we've been going heavier into media, heavier into development, heavier into technology, heavier into robotics, heavier into AI. So heavier into those aspects of digital, but we've been digital for the last 5 years.
Rohit?
Yeah, so I basically what Virat and Amit are saying is, true, and that's happening across. I think so. I don't want to repeat their points. I think the important piece here, according to me, I think is how agencies are able to pivot on the current situation and offer a whole new suite of services to their clients, and I think that's fundamentally the one of the tenets of survival. When you're looking at independent agencies and network agencies, I think the thing is not about whether it's the network agencies or the independent agencies. It's really about what the agency is offering, right? So what's the the key thing, that whether it's digital or mainline or whatever that the agency is offering, is how well does that agency adapt? How well does that agency react in this new situation? And I think that's fundamentally the big challenge here. So if you look at retail, that's the big highly impacted category. So what's the new normal in retail, and how is that going to impact consumers and then obviously brands and companies who rely a lot on retail? What's the new normal and how the agency can help there? What's the new normal when it comes to experiential? What does the agency offer? And those are new capabilities and offerings really that agencies need to bring quickly to play. And that's really the flexibility of the agency to adapt, I think is really critical and key in this scenario.
But in that case, who's more equipped to adapt to these kind of changes? Would it be a network agency which has all the wherewithal to sustain a crisis of this magnitude, or would it be the independent agencies who have control over whatever they're doing? They're not answerable to their bosses anywhere else. Raj, would you like to tell me what is the big difference that the network agency has from an independent agency? In this, kind
before
of
Raj, Neeta, I just wanted to add to that since I started this piece.
Yeah.
My whole thing on this is really, it's not about network agencies or creative agencies. It's about leadership, right? And it's the agency leadership that will define. At this point, the most important thing is that it's truly the test of the best leaders in the market, and leadership will define who will survive, who will not survive, what the dynamic is, and how that will actually evolve as we go along. So leadership is key. And whether it's a network agency or an independent agency, a lot depends on who's leading, what's the vision, and how quickly and how honestly and transparently does this leader help the agency change and adapt.
I think, Rohit, for sake of debate, if I just go to other side and have a debate on this, I think independent agency equivalent to leadership, the person who taking a decision. Any employee in an independent company have a choice to take a decision. I think the biggest problem with network agency, what we saw, you don't have a leader. The leader has to listen to somebody in London or New York, unfortunately. Many decisions, not every decision, but many decisions are come from there. What office they want to keep it, what office they don't want to keep it, who they want to keep it, what increment. So the 90% leadership come from a globally. And I don't believe culture across the countries or borders. So I think they will never understand tomorrow New York has a different story than Mumbai. So how this network sometimes, not all the time, not all the agencies are tougher. That independent agency is easy for me to, today we understand there's a situation, we can take a decision together. Network, I have to wait for 3 days till they get reply back to me, and then I will take a decision. So I will say the biggest difference that I will see in this kind of situation, we have a power to take a decision, whatever decision we want. And we get a chance to be every single employee, be a leader in the situation like this. So I think I'm opening what Nita wanted to have a debate, we can starting from there.
I
The
quite
big
agree
fight
with
is
what
started.
Raj is saying. I completely agree with what Raj is saying, and I've seen both sides of, and I think all of us have seen at the network side of the agencies at least. So it's not that network agencies don't respond, they don't plan, there is no leadership, there is all of that there. However, decision making takes time and involves a lot of people, and that is therefore they're never nimble on their feet. I mean, I can sit and hire a person of a very, very high salary across the table without getting approvals from anyone. Just thinking in my own mind whether it works for me or not. And that's exactly what we did. But I can imagine a network agency, I would never have been able to do that. I would have had to plan one hell of a lot. I can take decisions today for my team and that benefit my clients on our own. It's not that network agencies don't do that. They're very well organized. But sheer fact that they're networks, sheer fact that global teams work on global brands and sometimes global, large team works on local brands, they need approvals down the line. Finance is involved, HR is involved, everyone's involved, and it's. I hope they're working around it because they'll need to.
So I
Amit,
just
would
want to
you
say,
go on, go on.
yeah. So I just want to say, this it actually depends on what kind of decisions, first of all, you're talking about, and of course there are some quick decisions, easy decisions that that can be taken, and there are some high ticket decisions. And I think at the end, in the end, at least my experience, I don't know about Rohit, my experience has been that we are left to take decisions in our own way. There's a broad guideline, and we are absolutely encouraged to take our decisions as long as we are maintaining financial discipline. And I think that actually is good for network and indie agencies, as long as there is good governance, as long as there is financial discipline, as long as there is vision, like you said, Hemant, that vision is clear. Those decisions are actually never discouraged, and really don't have to go. I don't know whether it was happening like that in some other agency, but we don't have to go running for every clip and pin that we buy.
So, Neeta, I think the key thing here is really about, and I hear Hemant and Raj, I think the key thing is also, I think all networks are not similar. Like all independent agencies are not similar, right? So Virat and I, we work with the IPG group. And I think the IPG group's philosophy and how they work with their creative brands in the network is very different from what a WPP or a Publicis does, right? So like Virat was saying, my experience has been pretty much the same as well. I mean, we are almost like, a conglomeration of independent agencies across the world. And each leader in each market is fully empowered to take calls. And I think the big call here, and I think that's where I want to, put in the debate with Raj, is really not about who you can hire and what you can't hire and whether you can get a clip or a pencil. It's really about what's your vision? Where do you want to, how do you want to adapt and take the agency forward? That is important, right? And that doesn't cost money. And that doesn't come from, a network, because networks actually are looking to each market. This is an unprecedented time, right? So the networks actually want to learn from markets, and each market is actually sharing their experience and their do's, don'ts, what has worked, what has not worked across. So everybody is learning, everybody is trying to understand. So it's a question of how you, as the leader in a particular market, actually envision what you want to do. So there are new services, new collaborations, new capabilities that you want to build and do. You can do it. And I mean, it's not that everything has to be an acquisition, everything has to be, a long, elaborate way of, I feel that the future is really about collaborations. How do you build collaborations? How you create teams and work behind a particular new service, new capability. And I think that's really a modern agency thinking and format. And I think that's the key. That is really what defines and makes the difference. Of course, in a network agency, there will be a certain constraints more, because obviously Raj, Hemant, and Amit lead their own agency and make their own decisions, right? So we have to work within a certain pre-defined guideline and setup, which is true. But within that, I think how well you can adapt, how well you can pivot, I think is really the key.
Yeah,
So
I'd like to add. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think what Raj is also talking about is that I think now's the time when you need that maximum flexibility. So I agree with Rohit in that sense that I think it's not about being independent, or it's not about being a network agency. I think the agency that will survive or do well is the agency that's the most flexible, and I think the agency that's the most humane. It's the question just is that, I mean, do you have the freedom really to be that? And I've been on both sides of the table, been through a lot of crises, been through 2008, been through a lot of difficulties, been through times when and in different agencies across different networks. And just there are some things that we've done now that I could not even think of doing earlier. And it's not just me, it's the people in the organization, it's my CEO, it's my partners, it's the kids in the organization who come up with the ideas. But for example, we went out there and we actually within the first week went to a client and said, hey, we get that you're a real estate client. We know that we have to worry about paying 6,000 workers and getting them back to their homes right now. For the next 3 months, don't worry about us. We are not charging you. Let's not even talk about it. Okay, so that's a call that my CEO, my partner, the business heads, me could just take immediately within the week. And I don't think I've not been able to take that call elsewhere. So that's one example. Or for example, we realized very early that our cash flow is an issue. I mean, we're a self-funded agency. The cash flow would be an issue. Obviously, one day you're open and the next day you're locked down. I wasn't even in office the day we locked down. So it's that crazy. But and we said, hey, we need to be deferring salary. So we actually went to every person in the organization. And this was again something that my CEO came up with, and we said, let's do it this way. And we went to every person in the organization and said, okay, guys, this is what a cash flow is. This is what our cash flow looks like. This is what the next few months looks like. We would need to be deferring. We don't want to do any cutting right now. We would need to be deferring your salaries. But we want to leave the freedom to you. So we actually told each of them that, hey, we know each of you have different expenses. Each of you have different needs. Think about it. Come back to us and tell us exactly how much of the salary you can defer. You say you want 100%. We'll give it to you. There'll be no questions asked. And we actually saved 40% that month. Subsequently, we paid that, but we actually saved 40% that month. And I can't see that happening elsewhere. I just can't. And I've been through it, been there, done that. And I think there is that little freedom and flexibility that is
I can add one more point. I completely agree with that. And Rohit, I think every agency has the leader who run the company, and they take a decision, local decision, but finally, end of the day, they have to make money for global. They have to make a 30%. They have to send it to New York or London. They have to figure it out. That pressure, maybe today, I don't know what that pressure is the same, but always a pressure to using that brand name. We have to give that franchisee fees, right? Today in the tough market, are we going to charge the client that extra money? Today, the client who looking for an agency who can be, his business is in a trouble, he needs somebody who can be affordable, charging many times this extra money for brand name. Or I saw one interesting agency have a title called Chief Growth Officer. The Chief Growth Officer for that agency, not for the client. I don't know why client has to pay for Chief Growth Officer for that agency or fancy building, or using a brand fee. So that is a client side question. I can ask that.
I want to add something here because, Amit briefly mentioned salaries. Network agencies have literally taken a lead in slashing employee salaries and firing people also. I think John Wren, CEO Omnicom, told his staff way ahead in April that furloughs and staff reductions are going to happen. Same with BBDO president and IPG CEO Michael Roth. what is the advantage really of from the talent point of view of being part of a bigger, more stable organization, really the first casualty. Virat, you might want to talk about that, considering Mullen Low Lintas did impose salary cuts in May, I think.
Yeah, so look, it's not just network agencies. I mean, we have to be realistic. I don't think we can live in, in denial. So across companies, across industries, everyone has to be and has been realistic. When your revenue suffers, you have to put your costs in line with that. Having said that, I think we took a very conscious call that we will not let people go. So that as a we had the kind of we were empowered to take that kind of a decision. That in our country there's no social security, and if anybody loses a job at this point, there's no way for that person to find a job, and that is something we wanted to protect for for all of our people. So we took that call, and and we conferred with our people that which way should we go. So everyone was unanimous that okay, let's take a salary cut, and it's a small salary cut, and it's a temporary salary cut, and let's protect the jobs of our fellow colleagues so that we can pull through this crisis. So I think it's a matter of discipline. It's a matter of being realistic. There's no need for false bravado. So I think that's really the thinking that we came from, and we were fully supported by our network.
Raj, have you done something similar in your organization? Have you cut salaries or reduced staff at this point?
No, I think we did from this month, but we did two things. I think anybody who earning till 35,000 and who complete 1 year, we increase their salary 20%, because people who are earning very less money and they're staying home, blah, blah, blah. So not only cutting their salary, anybody who earning 50, 60,000, less than that, we haven't touched them. And 25 to 35, we reduce the salary 10 to 20%. And the top, whoever the few people who work with me and the core in the management, we take some salary less so we can afford that thing. We all sit together and take this decision, not 1%, 2%. The entire agency, we take a decision. So as Vic said, there is a good benefit that we talk, as Virat said, similar. So I think it was just who need money at this time. This time is a tough, we don't want to fire anybody. We want to hold every single employee. Mm-hmm. We don't want to shut any office. We want to keep every single office. And that is the plan. The plan is we are together in this tough time.
Hemant, where you went up, I remember you said that you went to and offered them a double-digit, fee cut. Considering most of your clients are literally the badly affected sectors, like Take My Trip, Go IB-Book. Have you started sacking employees or slashing salaries? I think in the beginning you mentioned that the business become better for you in this past month. How has that approach been for you?
Sorry, I lost the connection between. Is the question to me?
Have you started salary cuts yet, Hemant?
So
sacking employees?
We've. I completely agree with Virat. Actually, there's no bravado here. Unlike large network agencies, our personnel cost is nearly 90%, 80% of our cost. And therefore, we have very little overheads, and that's a big advantage that independent agencies or small agencies. I wouldn't say independent agencies. Independent agencies can be very big also. But small agencies have over large agencies that overheads are very controlled, and therefore it's simpler to get into controlling payouts for employees. So we've also, till a certain level, had no cuts, and at the senior level, we've done some cuts at the agreement of everyone. And I think that's something that's happened across the board. The only point I wanted to add actually here was that, we've been talking about vision and leadership and stuff like that. The one thing that is most discussed, at least was, when I was part of network agencies, was the P&L. And I've always felt that the P&L is the leader in every network agency. So while you are free to do a whole lot of things, there are certain parameters given to you that this is certain margin and this is something that we must keep to. If you slip below that, there are 100 guys standing up and asking questions. And whenever a crisis happens, the freeze is one of the most famous words in network agencies. Everything has frozen. So salary increases are frozen, increments are frozen, new hirings are frozen. And this is not a new thing. I think, late salaries, no increments is something that has been happening in this industry since 2009, when the industry experienced the first thing and people had to start traveling economy instead of business. And I don't think that's gone back in a lot of places. So my point is that when you are a slave to a P&L, which has been decided and you agree to it, it gets very, very tough to be able to take the right calls, because you've committed to that P&L, and to change that P&L, it takes a lot of circles. Region, world, and whoever you're reporting to needs to agree to that change in P&L. Because at the end of the day, we have to be fair. Network agencies have to report to the stock exchange, and their earnings are called out. So it's not very easy for anyone to shift that. While they have the bandwidth to be able to control it, because there's so many offices across the world and across India, it is still very difficult to try and change that P&L. It takes time, and that's to my mind, a problem, and also a safety net that network agencies have, which independent agencies don't have. I change my plan when I feel the need to do it. Maybe that's not a very prudent thing to do. It's working for me now, and it may work for me for some time. But I think that's one hurdle that I'm very happy I don't face today, that I need to discuss my P&L with someone else.
Rohit, would you say that's a safety net or a problem?
So, we are in business, right? And I think that's the important piece in this whole thing. I don't think any of us are running charitable organizations here, right? So the fact is that to keep an eye on your P&L is a smart thing to do. Of course, the whole thing about, the P&L guiding and your shareholder value guiding the whole agency is really what can cause a disaster, because finally, we all know we are creative agencies. We need to keep creative in the center of everything that we do. So, overt focus on cutting and maintaining the shareholder value, I think is a challenge. And I think that's something that needs to be managed. So like I said earlier, I think it's a function of which network you're working in and how shareholder value and profit and margin focused is that network, right? So there are, and I've had that experience as well. But luckily for us, I think we have a lot more freedom in IPG, and I think as a network, it's a more empowering, more human, and a more listening network, and I think that makes a huge amount of difference. So there are pluses and minuses in every situation, right? So the fact that we have a diverse portfolio which helps us absorb the shock of one or two clients going into a kind of a big cutback and stuff like that. Those are things that help. I think the biggest thing at this point, which is of enormous value to me, and that really, really is something that I think, as a network agency, I'm enormously grateful that I have that, is really about the partnership of my colleagues across the world, right? Because at this point, there is no playbook here that I can open and say, oh, what happened here in 10 years back, right? So the fact is that I'm learning on an everyday basis from and picking up from colleagues in China, colleagues in New Zealand, where there's a complete COVID-free kind of a situation, countries that are limping back, countries that are still in lockdown. So you're seeing the situation and you're learning from that, and I think that to me is invaluable, because you're getting a visibility of what are the things that could happen, what could go wrong, how do you need to plan, what new ideas are required to manage in this kind of a situation. I think that is truly invaluable, because your network of knowledge is perhaps the biggest thing that that can help you through this complete period of crisis.
No, that's actually interesting. Raj, I'd like to ask you, Rohit is saying that, as an agency with multiple offices across the country, they have some kind of learning from each market to, which they can implement in maybe India or anywhere else. So there's a worldview kind of a learning that they have. Is that something that independent agencies lack?
No, I think, as I said, many ideas are local ideas. I don't know the same campaign that worked in New York. Look at the Wyden Kennedy. Last year is perhaps the most awarded creative company in the world. In Cannes Festival is an independent company. But look at their offices across the world are not doing well. So what happened to that learning, what they have there in the US? So, and it's a cultural thing. I think that culture, that campaign that work in US, maybe the other side is kind of an adaptation. Like you have a global idea and many local agencies just adapt the idea. You just tend to find a local context with that. So I think that learning, I don't think, as I always believe, that culture don't translate. Culture don't cross the borders. I think that culture, that thing work here maybe won't work in New York. But tomorrow, some agency have offices across the world, and there's an Indian client, and he need an agency, and he chose a network agency where the base is India and going to be sell his product in 100 agencies will work. But today, I don't think I work for big network agency, but yes, that knowledge, I don't know how relevant in India as a specific country.
So Raj, I just wanted to add,
Actually,
I'm not talking about campaigns, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about campaigns at all here. I'm talking about business. I'm talking about consumers, and I'm talking about, how the market is evolving, what is happening in each country as the lockdown and unlock happens. Are consumers going back? How are they going back? What are the challenges that there are? What are the challenges that brands are feeling? And I'm not even going to whether a campaign will work across. That is a whole
No,
different topic
no,
of
fair enough.
conversation. I'm
See, I
talking
think
about the learning from the businesses and how consumers and businesses are bouncing back into in different phases, in different markets, in different parts of the world.
So that's a great
See,
point, Rohit. And I just
Rohit,
want to add,
sorry.
I
let
just
Virat
want to
want to
add
talk.
that our Subbu, who's our group chief strategy officer, has actually done a piece of strategic framework for brands in recessionary times, and he worked with all the planner community in different countries, and it's actually gone live, and we are launching it officially soon. But the whole point is that the resourcefulness of being able to tap into planning resources across the world, and also being able to tap into business schools that have analyzed past recessions, etc. I mean, the sheer resourcefulness of a network is actually something that we can tap and make it really valuable, to the client. And I think that's something that the client really, so agility, definitely client looks for, flexibility is important. But I think the other aspect, which is, strategic focus and, having, giving the client some kind of insights into when they're all treading in this darkness, that is again something that is quite valuable. So,
Yeah.
so I believe network agencies, and there's no reason why indies can't do it. I'm not saying they can't, but I think, but I think networks, at least Rohit and I were discussing in the past also, we've seen it, the kind of stuff that, Rohit was telling me, we were talking a few days ago, and what I've, told you guys is stuff that, the resources are available either in the global network, or the sheer brand that allows you to tap into resources globally, or within the group, IPG group in India. I mean, we collaborate with our IPG, IPG agencies, whether it's digital, whether it's activation, etc. So those opportunities clients really, really value. I think let's not forget, let's keep clients in the middle, brands in the middle. What do clients and brands want from agencies, whether it's independent or whether it's network agencies? I mean, we all have to serve to that.
No, completely agree with that. So I think even in terms of learning, I think learning is really, really important, and network agencies obviously have it easier in that sense, and there's a whole network to tap into. But yeah, I mean that's something that I think, like you said, even indie agencies, if they work hard at it, can get there. So I think if you believe that that's important, and I think just and I'm actually giving an example for Raj, and I think he's forgotten about it or not mentioning it, but he's literally had a workshop every week for his organization, and he got some of the top people in the world to talk. So he's got Josie to talk. He's got I mean, Josie, not from the video, but from Singapore. So similarly, I think he's got about 15 speakers to speak weekly to the entire organization, which I've been jealous of. I mean, this is a speaker lineup that's been far better than a Can speaker lineup.
But
And
so I think
similarly,
yeah, I mean, thank you, Amit.
sorry,
But I
so,
think the
yeah,
world of today is very easy to get that knowledge. I think early days, being a creative person, if what's happening in New York, I have to wait for 2 years, because once they get award function finished, when Amit we were in the young, and then they printed the annual, and the annual come to India, and we see that ad. It take 2 years what's happening there to find out. Today, whatever happening in New York or London, we can find out in 5 seconds. So knowledge is much more open, much more, I will say. Plus, I think many times the philosophies with the big networks has it. I don't know how relevant after COVID. That is another thing. I think one thing I always look at this whole COVID-19 make everybody equal. Whoever do better work, as Rohit said, who's the better leader in the future is going to be definitely going to work. I think if you say flexibility or agility, those are the independent agencies core. That is something we thrive. That is something we can do very fast. So I think is a future after this COVID-19 is going to be a very different business. I think is what was relevant earlier, whatever the people were relevant earlier. I don't know, maybe is going to be the same anymore after this.
I
I
think
think
one
like
key
Virat
difference,
said,
I see,
sorry.
Virat and Rohit have correctly said that network agencies have a lot of resources and planning resources, other resources. They get a lot of information. The Indian audience is slightly peculiar, as I guess every country is. Therefore, you need to do some more work in India. I think the essential difference between a network agency and an independent agency, as I see it, is really from the client's point of view. If you're a global brand and you need global learning, you need to go with the global agency a lot of times. But a global brand, which is actually look at, and I've experienced those who say we want to get away from the global learning and we want to be specific to this country, do look at different agencies. And I think what clients look for in a network agency is the strength, is the capability, or the size of it. But what they look for in independent agency is the person. Each independent agency is led by a person who sells. It is not the agency which sells. It's a mistake to think that people are going to independent agencies because they want independent agencies. They're going to because they want Amit, they want Raj, they want independent people. Because they have respect for those people, because those people have proven themselves in the marketplace. So most independent agencies are run by individuals who are the leaders, who are what clients buy into, which is why those relationships are much stronger. Not to say that network agencies don't have talent, they have phenomenal talent. I'm not doubting that at all. But it is not the people there, it's the agency that sells, and the collective agency that sells and makes a lot of difference. Independent agencies sell different. They sell.
Hemant, I'm not sure of that. I think that the talent is there absolutely
Yeah,
everywhere, and I think
everywhere. Yes.
Virat sells, and Amir sells, and Rohit sells, and Swati sells, and Keegan sells, and I think I mean there's a lot of great talent there, and people do sell. I think there are other advantages and disadvantages. The fact is that the big clients, and like Virat said, I think we should. At the end, it comes down to what the client wants, right? Absolutely nothing else matters. And while Neeta tried to be provocative by saying you're open to having flings with clients and going for projects, but the fact is that clients are open to having flings. So I think more and more clients are out there looking for something else. I think they're looking for flexibility, they're looking for agility, they're looking maybe even for new age work. I mean, for example, a lot of clients are able to convince their networks that we don't have to adapt any longer. So we were lucky to do one of the biggest campaigns last year, which was the Johnny Walker uh, traveling billboard and the Keep Walking campaign. And it's an iconic campaign. And obviously they had international agencies, but they wanted an Indian agency to, to crack it open for them over here. And we had a truly integrated digital first campaign, which worked brilliantly for them. I think it comes down to what the client wants, and an agency somewhere being able to give that. Yeah.
I want to come in here. In a one advantage or disadvantage, whatever, in this COVID specific situation, which network agency has is maybe their clients are diversified. As opposed to being in one sector. If I'm talking about smaller agencies which have like specific clients who are syncing at this point in time and they will sync with them. So do you agree that smaller independent agencies have that problem where they don't have diversified clients and they can thus get affected in a big way?
Of course, you have that, but I'm sure that's then bigger agencies also. I'm sure there's an agency that's skewed towards one client. I was in Ogilvy, Bangalore, and for a long time, Levers was the largest client. And when Levers left, we had to survive, and we did, and we simply went after the ITCs of the world, and the clients that we had 3 months back were in the retail sector, were in the real estate sector, and the clients we have now 3 months later. And hopefully the retail sector and the real estate sector clients will be back and will be doing work for them soon, and we already are. But the clients that are there with us now are from health insurance and OTT and digital content sectors that are thriving right now. So I think you have to. I mean, you're right. It does affect you, but you have to be ready for that. Whether you're an independent agency or, I mean, diversity is something that you have to solve for either ways. You can't be too dependent on one client or one sector.
Diversity is something that we all need to bring in, especially to keep talent. No talent wants to work only on one kind of business. So we continue to do that and try and get diverse clients. So of the few clients that I have, they're completely diverse. However, your point is correctly made. Independent agencies have very little fallback if they're not well diversified. And that can be a huge problem where network agencies have a huge advantage. Not only are they diversified, they have the backups. They have resources to be able to survive for a long. So like Ogilvy Bangalore took a dip because of HLL going, like Amit said. I mean, they had the agency to make sure that the people got paid and the agency survived. And it gave them legs to rise up again. And that's a tough choice for independent agencies. It's you need to have strong legs and you need to run fast. Otherwise, you will slip and fall if you're not well diversified. That is
and I can add only a word that being an independent agency is a choice. Is not something situation make you independent agency. Is by choice we decide to be independent and not to go with a bigger or smaller. So it is our decision where we want it to be.
But eventually, independent agencies do sell to networks.
That's what I was going to come to.
I have an answer for that. I think if you look at it, what David Ogilvy or Foot Cone in a building or a Low Harvard Spring, all they were independent agencies earlier.
Yeah.
One day they decide to make more money, nothing else, and they want to decide more offices. What is the other reason?
No, I'll tell you what the other reason is, Raj.
Like,
one is
let me come. So
yeah, sure.
I think all these top creative guys, they were doing very well, whichever country they were, and they were fantastic. Why? The only reason to make, say, my ex-boss Mohammed Khan always said very interestingly, say he defined the independent agency and the network agency. The difference is, he said network agency is like a clinic where a patient go, they have 15 doctors and 15 floors and 100 beds. Depending on how much money you have, you get a patient, that kind of doctor, that kind of engineering, that kind of operation. We are independent agencies like a doctor running a small clinic. For me, that patient is the first and most important thing. So here, the entire business is based on the emotion. I think today's conversation, say creative talk or creative zone, I think the whole independent company, the core of the company is always an emotional decision. It was never a rational decision. So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, but I must say that also a dangerous choice. Like Rohit said, it's a business.
We can hear.
Can't hear you.
Business.
I'll make my point that I was trying to make when Raj. I didn't want to interrupt Raj. See, one reason why independents sell to network is they want to cash out. But I think another important reason is that, like someone mentioned on the panel, that the biggest strength of independent is the person, the personality, and I think that's also the constraining factor, because beyond a point, that person can only do that much, and scaling up and growth, that becomes a challenge. There are very few who have actually managed to kind of, and it's great if you can actually build an organization and build a culture that goes beyond that person. But that's really another reason why
but I think Virat,
independents have sold to networks so that they can scale and that
but Virat, I think all these big network agencies, the name outside as an individual, it's called Frank Lowe, his agency. Food Cone in a building, this 3 people's agency is a Leo Burnett, is an individual. On a BBDO is a 4 individual guy. So it was never a company. So this business is always run by individual. He defined what kind of company I want to run. And after that become a big trade, go all the way to wire plastic product to, I don't want to go there. But I think is owned by different people. Now 90% people don't know who they're working for. I saw many people don't know. If I ask many people to work for this 3-digit, 4-digit company name, can you tell me who are these people? They don't know the names. But the best time of their life, they're working for somebody who they don't know, who they never met. And there's a question for me always: who are you working for?
It'll be hard for them to meet Food Cone in welding.
No. The many complicated names of the
times,
agency.
that's a dangerous place.
I think that's the sake of thing. I think it's a funny building. Some people say not building, they say building. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go on. You want to say something, Raj?
No, we're done. I'm just a joke about
Okay,
it.
now I'll just one last viewer question. Just a second. So he's trying to say the clients are bread and butter for all kinds of agencies. But in these tough times, when they make unrealistic demands, who suffers more? Independents or network agencies?
I think creatives. doesn't matter which agency.
Everybody suffers.
Everybody suffers. I think there's no difference.
I think unrealistic again. We have to be conscious that the client is really facing tough times, and what may seem like unrealistic to somebody may actually be a client's stress. So I think if we all can be mature, and this is not a fact, this is not a point for independent versus a network. This is about empathy. Do you really understand your client's business and what they're going through?
Yes.
And if you can empathize with that.
Completely agree with Virat. I don't think it's a question of independent or network agency. Here, the agency leadership plays a big role. While working for a network agency, I've told the client, I won't charge you anything for the next 3 months.
Yep.
Simply because I don't want to cut my fees. I don't want to compromise. I will not do that. I'll work free for you for the next 3 months. When you come back, pay me the full amount. And it turned out to be really great. It just showed the client that we're willing to invest ourselves in their business. And it showed me that there was ability. The problem wasn't the ability, not the intent. And that's the real question. Is the problem in the ability to pay, or is the problem in the intent? If the problem is in the intent, that's not a good client. You shouldn't work with them. If the problem is in the ability, every agency leader understands and is able to take care of it without being a leader, independent or network.
Well said.
So I hope I'm not frozen. It's showing me I'm frozen. I'd like to sum it up with your permission. Am I audible?
Yeah, the screen is frozen, but we can hear you.
So clients, from what I heard and saw, clients have not faced this kind of an uncertainty in the worst of recessions. And I feel right now they're looking at creative agencies as their strategic partners to help them tide through the crisis. So I would not really say a big ship or a small ship will be able to weather the storm better, but a sturdy ship, irrespective of the size, will do just fine. So thank you so much for joining me on this debate. And hope you guys all have a great Q2, and we meet again to talk about how successful all of that was. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, guys. Hey, Rohit, Virat, I think it's just the sake of debate. It's just a fun we're having here.
Hey, we had fun, man.
Yeah, completely. Take care, guys. Be safe.
Yeah,
thank you. See you on the other side.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.